psychic, spiritual guide, astrologer, and the host of the podcast. I'm really into that stuff. Our very welcome guest today from Toronto is Jana. Known for her bold and authentic approach to spirituality, Jana empowers individuals to uncover their inner gifts and embrace their true selves. Rejecting the traditional guru model, she emphasizes that each person is their own guide and encourages self-love and alignment with one's higher self. Jana's work spans intuitive readings, astrology, and energy healing, offering her clients clarity, healing, and personal growth. She's celebrated for her ability to create a safe and transformative space where individuals feel seen and supported, which is just so important. Jana's podcast, which is fabulous, guide you all to listen to that, even before you listen to mine, explores themes of spirituality, self-expression, and the human experience, fostering meaningful conversations that inspire listeners to live boldly and authentically. That's a little bit of background, but I just wanted to start off with, first of all, thank you for being here. And secondly, just to take you back a little bit. So what was your childhood like, your formative years? Did you always feel connected to intuition, or was it just something that came to you in later life?
Yeah, no, I definitely, first of all, thank you so much for that introduction. So lovely to be here. Yes, I always felt connected to my intuition. My childhood was beautiful and chaotic. My father is schizophrenic, and he had sort of every diagnosis under the sun. He was very unwell, like intensely unwell from when I was very, very young. And I don't exactly know when, but at some point I started to recognize that the voices I could hear might be the voices he was hearing. And so I started to sort of separate my intuitive knowing from the voices and not wanting to be like him. And it was a lot of years of, I could hear crystals as a child. I could, tap in. I was always the kid that gave this like super sage wisdom advice, even as a very young kid. And I had a knowingness and a way of speaking and a way about my energy, and people loved my light. But there was a lot of sort of shutting it down over the years because of the complexity of what it meant to be somebody's daughter, knowing how, um, you know, out to lunch he was and is. So, um, you know, my parents separated when I was very young. I was 4 by the time they got divorced, and my mom had they had 2 younger children than me, so it was me and my 2 younger brothers. Um, sort of on our own with my mom. When I was 4, they were 3 and not even 3 months yet. And it was an intense time. My mom remarried to a man who I love very much, who is very much my dad. He raised us. And we blended our family. He had 2 kids from his first marriage. And there were a lot of times that my intuition was a distraction. When you're blending families, when you're pulling, strange people together and saying, okay, now you go, and this is new dad, and this is new brothers, and this is how it goes. Now kind of get on board. All of my intuitive needs, all of my deep, 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 deep feelings. I'm a Pisces sun, so my way is just to be in the depths, and to be sort of like an emotional person. And so there was a lot of too muchness in my world. And that over a number of years shut me down into a place that was really, really intense. Started to manifest my own mental health issues, my own eating disorders, things like that. And then I went into treatment shortly after a near-death experience. I had a suicide attempt. And when I came back into my body, it was very clear everything was different. I had a mission. I was here for a reason. And my main mission is to follow that intuition and to be with what it feels like to be Jana, not to be my father or my mother or my brothers or anybody else, but really just to be me. And, that was just about really diving into metaphysics, into spirituality, and remembering that those muscles are there for me to use, and starting to kind of, lift those guys up a little bit.
That's a interesting start to life, really. So I'm a Pisces sun as well, actually.
The best of us are.
And yeah, and yeah, I do think that with the emotions that sign brings, we do find ourselves in the depths and sometimes feeling overwhelmed by everything because it's just so much that we feel connected to. And I think, and did you realize when you were quite young that you were, I think this is the right word, that you were different from other people, other children, that
Oh,
not everybody could do this stuff? It wasn't like, oh yeah, everybody does that. It was like, oh no, I'm different.
yeah. And for a really, really, really long time, I didn't, because I was so young, I didn't understand that what was making me different was me. It wasn't the circumstances of my father
Yeah.
and being, I was the first kid. I mean, it was the 80s. I was the first kid whose parents were divorced. I was the first kid. And it wasn't just a normal divorce. My mother served him papers when he was in a psych ward. So it was like this really intense thing. And I always had this thing on my back that everybody kind of knew. I grew up in a really small community where everybody kind of knows everybody and everybody's up in everybody's business. And so, yeah, it took me a really long time to understand that what was special about me was me, not this thing that was kind of happening in my world. But yes, I always knew I was different. I always knew that I was something that everybody else wasn't. And I was never afraid to stand up in it and sort of stand out from it. But for many, 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 many years, my standing out was always equated with that I carry this story. And so, yeah, it's been a lot of deprogramming and rewriting and little going back to little me and giving her what she needed, because I didn't understand. All I understood was new life. Yes, you're special, but your specialness is actually really disruptive, because there needs to be some kind of status quo amongst, I grew up with four brothers, right? And boys are different than girls. And so it was made very clear to me that I was emotional, I was this, I was that, but like there was no understanding. I'm a projector in human design, if anybody knows what that means. Like everything comes at me. And
Yeah.
I'm a Pisces, so I'm a deep, deep, deep feeling person.
Mm.
And it took a long time to get to understand that my special is mine. And I would say, even on some level, I'm still learning that lesson at, almost 40.
It's really interesting that you said about the thing that made you different and special was you and not the situation you find yourself in. Because I think we from a really young age, we are, and I use your word, we are programmed to fit in, to fit into school, to fit into college, to fit into the workplace, to fit into a relationship. And any 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 suggestion that you might think, behave, act, understand differently is not literally beaten out of you, but sort of metaphorically. Because the last thing a school teacher want is a class of 25 individuals. They want you all to be the same. And
That's right.
that's you makes their life easier, right? You're learning maths today and that's it. And
Mm-hmm.
no, I don't want to talk about this. No, I don't want to talk about your feelings or whatever. And hopefully it gets better now. But there is that thing still in society where we are expected to be part of what already exists, as opposed to being able to explore how we exist within a different environment. And it sounds like you've, over time, garnered the confidence and almost known that you have to exist almost outside of the norm. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Like that was literally the message when I had my suicide attempt. When I was outside of my body, my remembering of that moment, um, is that I was told I had a choice. And if I were going to come back, that the coming back meant stepping into that, and really owning it. Because interestingly, in my lineage, you're talking about they would beat it out of you. Literally, my great grandfather on my mom's side was left-handed, and in those days,
Yeah.
you could not be left-handed, and they literally whacked him with a ruler every
Mhm.
time he used his left hand, which was his natural hand. And it's so interesting because there are so many ways that we are absolutely programmed, right? This dimension, this reality that we believe in as reality, I believe that it's a projection. And I think in order to stay in the dimension that we're in, which I think has a very heavy density, and we can feel it, right? As we all kind of evolve and rise up, we can feel how heavy it feels to be where we are.
Mm.
And in order to stay in the density, there are only three dimensions to it. There, you can only go as far as the box. And when you're somebody who understands that there is more to it all than just what we see with our eyes. I mean, I know that I can't see the atoms of this, but it is made of atoms, right? And I
Mhm.
also believe that there is an out there that we cannot see with our eyes that is much, much bigger than we. We are the tiny ants of this universe. And I think when you have that understanding, you're like, why the hell do I have to learn geometry today? You
Yes.
know?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
No, totally, honestly. And it's funny about the reality is, so I am convinced we live in a simulation,
Yes.
that that reality is no such thing as reality,
Yeah.
and that, exactly as you say, that we are we are a microcosm in terms of what's really happening out there, and maybe we'll get to know one day, maybe we won't. But it's yeah. So exactly as you say. Well, why am I doing this thing that I always do? Why am I cleaning the windows again today that I cleaned yesterday? Why am I? All these things that are nonsensical.
Mm.
Actually, in my great granddad used to have his left hand tied to his body. So when he was at school, so he had to sort of, so he could only literally write with his right hand. It just insanity. And it's, I think it's 1 out of 10 people are naturally left-handed. So
Mm.
yeah, just that thing about conformity. No. Right hand is what we believe, and that's how we conform. Really, we
Mm.
talked a tiny bit before we hit record about the challenges and how people manifest empathy. So, a
Mm.
lot of people I talked to, and I think you're a pure example of this, have obviously been through some very challenging as even begin to explore it really. But bulimia, anorexia, physical, sexual trauma, lost faith in reality, and
Mm.
yeah, incredibly sort of lived outside of your body for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
So we were talking about, do we need to? Do you think you needed to have gone through that to get to where you are today? If you hadn't had that very real attempt to end your life, would you be where you are today?
Not even close.
Okay.
Um, I think that, we, in a lot of spiritual circles, we talk about like, oh, God makes the strongest warriors that go through the biggest blah, blah, blahs or whatever they say. I believe that big time. I think that more and more and more as we evolve, we see that those who have suffered quite deeply are moving into new realms of empathy and capacity for human connection and expansion, which we desperately need. We're in a world right now with AI. How do we even know what humanity feels like? We're
Hmm.
not tapped in with one another. So we need these warriors to help guide us as AI grows and as consciousness expands. Those of us who have suffered, I can tell you that I can feel another person's suffering. That is part of my gift. Part of my psychic gifts is that I can absolutely feel the suffering of another person, and not just like in an empathic way, but I can tell if you've had physical trauma, sexual trauma, I can feel those things in your energy. And so when other people come to me, when clients come to me and they're like, oh, this is happening in my life, and this person's being this way, my partner's being like that, my friend is being like this, I can really say to them, well, there are many different sides to this coin. We're not in a box, actually. You have to think bigger, 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 bigger. And those who have not suffered, like really suffered, and I think on some level we've all suffered,
Yeah, yeah.
but for those of us who've really been in the trenches, which is kind of how my life was for the good chunk of my life, though there were lots of beautiful things in it, um, and privileges. Um, I think that those hard experiences make you so much more grateful, make me so much more grateful for when things are beautiful. I have an appreciation for beautiful things that I think is lost on other people sometimes. And sometimes the beauty is in the pain. Sometimes the beauty is in the suffering. Sometimes the beauty is in the differences and the nuance and the minutia, and I focus and talk about those things a lot. I think nuance is how we heal. I think it's how we evolve. I mean, my father was unwell for many, many, many years. He still is unwell. And it's an ongoing process dealing with him 40 years later.
Mm.
But there is such beauty in being able to have him in my life, to know him as a person now that I'm a whole person, um, and to navigate the depths of my soul and my spirit in the reflection of that. And so, yeah, I think we need some suffering, and I think that 2020 and the things that have followed it have really shown us that, like, if you're not suffering, you're not human. And so you need to see the suffering in other humans before anything else, before you judge about how they're being and what they believe and how they're practicing any of those things, what they do with their bodies, any of those things. It doesn't matter. What matters is, are you able to hold empathy for their experience, their perspective? And yeah, I think I wouldn't have that if I hadn't really, really suffered.
What are your thoughts on generational trauma or trauma in our DNA? And I keep coming back to a book I read ages ago called "The Body Keeps the Score."
Yeah, great book.
Yeah, okay, so I don't necessarily, but just for the listeners, it's basically sort of saying that your body and your brain are sort of separate entities, and your body physically holds on to trauma you may not even be aware of. And I just wonder where, yeah, do you think trauma is something that we encounter directly, or it's trauma that we can sort of inherit from different generations?
I think both.
Mm.
And I think we can heal all of it in this lifetime. So, which is why we're all talking about this stuff ad nauseum on every platform as much as we can, because I think it's possible. I think that our genetics, it's interesting. I just completed a certification in EFT, which is tapping, right?
Yes,
And so
I
tapping, yeah.
talked to a lady in Australia.
Yeah.
There's
Oh,
a, I'm not sure we say you're a tapper or whatever, and it was fascinating.
yeah.
I hadn't come across it at all, so now I've now heard of it twice. That's good.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful practice, and it's a great tool for somatic release.
Yeah.
Um, and in some of the texts that I've read, in getting my certification, it talks about how, yes, we do carry this in our genetics, but that doesn't mean that we are programmed to the point that we can't deprogram. So, yes, if you have a history of things in your lineage, so for example, your great grandfather with his hand tied behind his back, or I guess this one behind
Mhm.
his back, there will be a part of you that will be observing something and learning something. And as you do so, your left hand might unconsciously go behind your back as you're learning. But as soon as you bring it into your consciousness, as soon as you notice, oh, there goes my left hand behind my back again, you have the ability to actually course correct and to heal it. And, healing gets spoken about a lot in some circles. Um, and I think that, and same with intergenerational healing, which I believe is very, very real. I'm a Jewish woman. I've experienced a lot of intergenerational trauma. And also, that doesn't mean I haven't experienced intergenerational joy and intergenerational, beauty and experiences that are also evolutionary and happy and good. And it's really about how much we cling to the negative and how much we store it. So when we start to use tools like EFT and somatic movement and breath work and things of that nature, we actually can move these programs and reprogram them in the body, in the vessel, because the body is temporary, right? It's the thing that we house, that our spirit
Yeah.
jumps into for a time,
Hmm.
but it's not permanent, which means that we have the capacity to do with it whatever we want. And every bump and every bruise and every broken bone and everything is there to show us there is something in your body to be healed. And an interesting, excuse me, practice to dive in with. I have a whole ebook on this, is the chakras, because they really point to where that energetic imbalance is, where you're manifesting dis-ease is where you are physically storing the trauma that could be intergenerational and could just be from something that's manifested in your own life from your own experiences. So, I think that we carry our intergenerational trauma in our bodies so that in this time of human history we can heal it. That's my belief on that.
And it's almost responsibility we carry for the next generation. So if we can sort of cut it off here, so to speak, and cut it out, then the next generation is like, oh, free and easy. they're,
God
they'll, have
willing.
their own, they'll have their own trauma, but at least they're not carrying
Yes.
on what I have
Exactly.
emotionally.
Yeah.
So one thing I really really drew me to you, I think, was what you emphasize very strongly to your clients, that you are the guru, as in the clients are their own guru, that you're
Yeah.
not you're not their light worker, their leader. You're there to help them navigate the path that their own mind and body knows they should be on. And I just wondered how you, whether you chose, or whether it chose you, that you weren't going to be this, right? No, this is what I say. Jana knows best. Here's what you need to do, and
Yeah.
let and almost by default made it naturally a very, very collaborative experience of working with you.
I think it was born out of years of therapy and healing
Hmm.
where everybody seemed to be so authoritative, and I never resonated with it. My best therapists I ever had felt like my friends.
Yeah.
And so too for my best healers, my best teachers and guides. Um, and I think that that's because I understood that we have this thing called free will. And as soon as somebody else tries to impose their free will upon you, you're sort of like, I don't need that. And whatever it is that you're trying to serve with that spoonful of sugar, I don't want it. So, and I also believe that when you're given the tools, and there are so many of them, so many, everything from, you know, like we've talked about, astrology, human design, breath work, somatics, Reiki, uh, crystal healings, you name it. There's so many different things, tarot, divination, all these different tools are available to us to help us to understand what our own need is in the moment, because sometimes in some moments you're like, that those cards don't help, but this thing does, right? Or I don't have the ability to breathe deeply right now, but I do have the ability to, like, scream into a pillow or whatever the thing might be. And there are so many different modalities, so many different things to know, and I've been really lucky that um, my Gemini moon has forced me almost to learn a lot of things about the world of spirituality. And I believe that when you have many tools available to you, then you can sort of like feel equipped to manage whatever it is that you were born for. And so, I have my whole program, my 6-month program called the Resilience Revolution, is all about this. It's about understanding who were you designed to be, which is that first breath you ever took, looking up at the stars, looking up at your natal chart and understanding, what did you arrive here for? What is your purpose? And then we go through all these different tools each month to understand, what are you able to use in those moments, and what feels good for you and what doesn't feel good for you. Because for some people, they're like, crystals are just rocks. They'd be wrong because they're fueling our phones and our computers and our watches and everything else. But there's a million things that are available to us to actually evolve and heal and relate to others different, relate to ourselves differently. But you have to know what the tools are.
Yeah.
And so, and then when you have those tools, you have to decide for yourself in the moment. You are the guru of your life, not me. So I can't step in and say it's Jana's way or the highway. It's not. It's your way in your life. And I wouldn't want to be the one to tell you you should this and you should that. I'll give you options, but you choose, you know?
Do you find that when people discover you, when they're drawn to call you or email you or whatever, do they tend to come to you with a question, or is it more a feeling that they haven't discussed? Sorry, let me just rephrase that. So back to your point before about what our purpose is, and I try and convince people of this. And the odds on individuals being born are billions to one that
Yeah.
particular sperm at that particular egg, and all it's such infinitesimally small odds that we're here. So why on earth would we find it hard to believe that we're not individually all here for a specific purpose?
Mm-hmm.
We're not just foot soldiers. We literally are here to do something, and trying to figure out what that is should be our life's work, really.
Yeah.
So when people come to you, is it with a question? Oh, I'm feeling this, or this part of my life isn't working properly, or I feel there should be more, or is it more of a I'm coming to see you and I'm not quite sure why? Can we explore together?
Yeah. It's usually like, if it's the former, then the mind blowingness of what it feels like to be in a session with me leads to something else. But usually it's the latter. Usually it's this feeling of like, I don't know what you know, but I need to know what you know. What do you
Yeah.
see about me? What do you know about me? When I tell people I'm a psychic, which in the first place is kind of a bold thing to say,
Mhm.
um, they tend to ask me questions like, well, what do you see in my future? And what do you know? They just want to know about themselves. And sometimes those are specific questions. Oh, I'm in this relationship. Is it the right relationship?
Yeah, yeah.
But I don't get a lot of that kind of thing. I get a lot of people who are deep feelers, who have big questions about the universe. And they come to me with those big questions, hoping for um, insight into what could be possible next for them. Yeah.
It's funny. I listened to it must have been a podcast from somebody a few weeks ago, and one of the questions they sort of asked the guest was, if you were coming back from 20 years in the future and could
Mm,
answer a question, what question would you ask that person? And I was I was amazed. This isn't meant to sound derogatory at all, but I was amazed how small the questions were that people
mm,
were asking. So you can know anything about the world in 20 years' time, and it was, will I still be doing this job, or
mm,
or even will I have children, or and
right.
I was just amazed at that people weren't sort of, didn't have sort of bigger
Right.
questions to ask.
Are we all okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Has AI taken over the entire world, and we're all enslaved to AI now? Or
Or like, have we moved beyond this narrow focus, me world, but we're
yeah,
still so in it.
yeah. Because we do tend to default to living in what people would think of as the physical realm, I guess. We often don't pay heed to where our minds and our higher levels of consciousness take us.
Mm.
Well, you do, but, but a lot of people, you don't. You just sort of
Yeah.
live day to day, and it's
Yeah.
yeah, that's what they do. And do you find when people come to you that you're able to intuit which tools to utilize?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Most of the time. I would say
Yeah,
98% of the time, if not more. Um, I think for the most part, I think most people are just seeking a validation that what they're doing is correct.
yeah,
Um, And so a lot of that, the time, what most people need is, if it's a one-off reading, usually what I end with is, go and do some homework on this. Go and do some diving. Go and be with yourself. What do the numerology of the cards mean? Who came through and why? Were there animals? What do the totems mean? Go deeper with it, because there's always going to be a deeper. When I'm in a coaching container, the reason that it has a start and a finish is because it is my desire for people to go and seek more answers afterwards. And I think that it's difficult to feel that you've got it, in
Yeah.
this realm. And so I just try to give people the confidence that, like, you probably do have it, because it's what you're here for. Like,
Yeah.
you're already, if you stopped focusing on trying to fit in, you'd realize that actually you're already doing it. You're already as healed as you need to be. You're already doing the right things. And if you're doing the wrong thing, which I don't even think is a thing, um, then there's a lesson to learn and a new version of yourself to become. And that's enough, you know?
Mm. Yeah. I think one of the challenges of this generation that we're living in now is that we have such an expectation of immediate answers, because we can access everything through our smartphones, and we can find out all the knowledge of the world, and it's at our fingertips, which is amazing, absolutely
And then
amazing.
use none of it.
Oh, absolutely, but we and people struggle when I talk to them about this. I think we spend so little time really trying to understand, what question am I actually trying to answer. We
Mm,
immediately want the answer, because the answer feels action oriented and it's doing, and right, here's the answer. But was that, like you said, people come to you, and I'm sure their first utterance isn't actually what they ultimately need to connect with. It's
no.
it's really helping. It's almost helping them to figure out, well, what's the answer. The answer will come. The answer's in you.
Right.
The challenge you're facing is, well, ask the right question. That's why I feel we don't do enough of, because we are so connected
Mm,
theoretically, but
mm,
I think we've never been less connected. Even though we have the ability to connect with anybody, I can connect with you in Toronto. You could be in Australia next week, and we can connect,
mm,
as in we can see each other. But
mm,
I do think we have this very sort of superficial connection with many more people via social media and lots of things. And I do struggle that. So I've got a 14-year-old and a 17-year-old,
mm,
and it almost feels that they're the sort of living in an experiment.
mm,
And in X number of years' time, we're going to realize actually spending 1 hour, 3 hours, 8 hours a day on social media wasn't a good thing.
mm.
And we need to find a way to connect more deeply.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's interesting because I feel sort of two ways about it. Again, the nuance, right? Um, yes, you're correct. We are definitely in a superficial, um, does it look good? Is the filter right kind of energy? But I also know that more and more and more and more people are seeking deep connection with one another, and they're listening for it, they're looking for it, they're searching for it. You know People are abandoning alcohol. They don't want to go on these binge fests. They want to
Yeah.
do dry retreats. They want to do all these things. And so it is sort of, I want to say, trending in the right direction with the younger generation. I Let me just say, I love Gen Z. I love Gen Z. I love Gen Alpha also. Um, I love the littles, but Gen Z has this like really beautiful um, mission here, which is that they are the end. Um, and we know from an esoteric perspective, the end is the beginning and the beginning is the end, and it's all cyclical. So there is no end. And being at the end, it means that they are responsible for showing us where things don't work.
Mhm.
And so much of their generation, you're right, they're just sucked into a vortex of something. And it's very difficult for many of them to come out of it. They don't know life before the internet. It's a
No.
fallacy for them. And so their understanding of unplugging is not real. It's a concept, right? In the same way that we don't know what comes in the future, they can't live in the past that they weren't in. And so their job is to help us to see how we collectively, those of us in the generations older than they, manifested the internet the way that it is and why, because we created it collectively together in this awful way that they are really suffering for. Like, their generation is depressed, they are suicidal, they are having
Mm.
a real rough time, and it's because we created that way. And I think it's because we, the elder generations, don't tap in, we don't let ourselves feel. And so the children, as in the Z's and the alphas, they are, as a woman without children, they are all suffering on some level because their parents won't really go there. They're starting to,
Mm.
but to go there with themselves without projecting onto their children, which every generation ever has done, right? It's why you want to be better than your parents. It's challenging. It's challenging. They have a job in front of them, those kids, because one day they're
Mm.
going to vote and rule the world, and then what?
Yeah. Yes. But as you intimated, there are absolutely huge positives to it, that people want to get together with a group of like-minded people that want to understand about crystal healing or tarot reading or whatever. And my daughter certainly does. She's studying philosophy and psychology and loves all these topics.
Cool.
And there's far more than I do. And she's able to reach out to a group that she
Mm.
may never ever see, whereas before I would have had to go to the library and find one very dry book written on crystals and find out it was a geology book and
Right.
not about healing. So
Right.
there is that ability to be able to do that. It's just
Yeah.
it's like anything else, isn't it? It's how we use it and how people are thinking when they're using it. Because as you said, we do have a people are feeling bad. We've got people are feeling incredibly lonely and
Mm.
disconnected, and it's yeah, helping people understand their purpose, and therefore is this a tool you can use to help support that purpose. Just wanted to quickly talk about your podcast, which is excellent. I just wonder so it wasn't as if you weren't busy enough. So what inspired you to start the podcast, and what conversations are you most passionate about having when you're on the show?
The thing that inspired me to do it was actually during the pandemic.
Mhm.
One of my best friends was living in England. She was living in London, and she's actually back here in Toronto now. But we were far away, and we would spend hours during the pandemic on the phone. And we were talking about all these really interesting things. And sort of offhandedly, I said, haha, this should be a podcast. And then we thought, let's do it. And so we started. And eventually she backed out. And I thought, no, I love this. I love this. I love having conversations about the woo and the weird with people. I think the conversations that I'm most powerful, like that I'm most connected to, that feel most powerful,
Mhm.
they're usually about, just people's stories.
Yeah.
And how they overcame, how they arrived. That's really why it's called I'm really into that stuff. It's like, how did you get there? How did you get from the system of school and this and that to be this fringe person in a world that is clearly trending in this direction? How did you land there? And so I love to, sit with strangers and friends and talk to them about, why do you do group therapy as a group therapist, or why do you, one of the most powerful conversations that I had was with a dear friend who was badly abused as a child, and the reframing that she was able to do in that, and how she changed her whole life because she just decided, I don't want to be the victim of this anymore, and what that even means. There are so many really powerful, potent conversations and understanding about what sound healing really does and the
Mm.
frequencies of our reality. I mean, I'm just fascinated by all of it. And, like I said, I have a Gemini moon, so I'm curious all the time. I just want to, be in these interesting dialogues with people. And I think that there are a lot of beautiful and interesting people in this world. And so the more I can chat with people and get to know and pick their brains, that's my happy place, even if I have a million things going on.
It's good, and I think the ability then people can listen to that wherever they are
Mm,
and hear it, and then it's like all of these things. I always then go back. Right now, I want to go and look that up and explore that a bit more and go into that a bit more detail. And you just find something that just you might listen to an hour or half an hour, whatever, and there's one thing, two things within just a conversation that
yeah.
actually that really resonates.
Hmm.
And I think it resonates for a reason because it was meant to resonate. It's
Hmm.
not just it's not just because that's the way the person talked about it. It's because that's something you needed to hear. So I
Yeah.
think it's a good thing that you're giving voice to it. I really do.
Thank you.
I heard somebody the other day say, and there were comedians that are probably saying it jokingly. They said that people are jealous of where people are, but they're not jealous of the journey it took to get them there.
Mm,
And which I think makes a lot of sense. But I think it's the journey that's obviously the important part
mm.
because where you end up is almost the default. But going through the journey, being able to take the first step on that path is the hard, interesting part. Where you end up is where you end up, and you can be jealous of that or not jealous of that. But the actual journey itself, as you said, going through that piece like your friend did in sort of deciding that okay, my journey is going to take a sharp left turn here. I'm
Yeah.
going to I'm going over there. I'm leaving behind this. I'm not a victim. I'm strong. My purpose in life is this, and it sounds almost overstating it, but people need to realize, just as you said, that it is absolutely possible and often preferable to change your life. And that isn't just a sort of saying people plaster on their websites. You go, "I'm here to change your life." No, I'm not here to change. You're here to change your life,
Yep.
and yeah, let's figure out what it is together. That's if people believed or knew that they could absolutely, fundamentally, in any way, shape, or form, change their life. I think that would just change how people view this time they have on Earth. Because, like I say, our soul hops. We have our soul. It's in this encasement. It goes to the next one, and it changes whatever. But at this time, yeah, we can fundamentally change and therefore live a different life.
Mm. Yeah, I fully agree with you. I think people aren't jealous of the journey because the journey is hard. It's like we were sharing earlier, right? Like
Yeah,
there is a suffering that has to be had in order to make a change. Most people don't change because they're not uncomfortable enough to make a change. And then they get jealous because they see that other people have done the quantum leaping. Um, but I think that humanity does have this beautiful opportunity right now to and I every time that I have conversations like this, so massive gratitude to you. I'm reminded that incrementally, bit by bit, the needle is moving in the right direction. And even though it has been a particular way, I believe that in the next 250 years, which is in the next, next time Pluto returns to where it is, humanity will know about its power because the CIA was releasing documents during the pandemic and continues to do so about how, like, we really are in a projection. It really is just a figment of our imaginations, this
Mhm.
whole reality. We have the capacity to astral travel. We have the capacity to not just change our minds, but change our biology, change our health. There are so many things that we are disempowered to do in this reality. And actually, it is created so that we are so poisoned and so poisoned in the mind that we don't even begin to think about, I have the power to change this, because if you know you have the power, then you will rise up against the powers that try to keep you down, right?
Yeah,
Um, but slowly, 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 we can see that those powers are sort of crumbling anyway. And as they do, people keep hearing these little things in a podcast, or they watch a little thing on a 10-second video, and you're like, whoa, what did you just say? Hold on. And then everything does change from that, you know?
and things actually in reality, if that's the right word, they do change very quickly. Because if you look back when sort of humanity has been around for such a tiniest fraction of a second in
Yep.
terms of the sort of history of the universe that we know and the older universe that we don't know. We don't even exist in a way. So, oh gosh, things, we've got 4 more years of this. I think that is literally, it's gone to the blink of an eye. It was
Mm-hmm.
less than 100 years ago. We had sort of two major world wars. We thought, oh my God, these are the wars to end all wars. No, they're not, because they literally were such a tiny fraction of time. And yes, individuals suffered at the time. Of course, and people continue to suffer. But
Sure.
in terms of where humanity's got the capacity to go to, beyond what we can see and what we can touch,
Mm.
that's what, yeah, I totally and utterly 100% hope you're right about the fact that we will, well, more people will start to understand that and will go along. Because I think what's happened is that the society, in terms of institutions, politicians, etc., they've done a great job in their minds of getting people to a place where they think they're okay and they can settle for what they've got,
Mm.
and they've sort of kept back the fact of, you could have so much more. You
Yeah.
really should have so much more. You deserve so much more. Your life isn't about settling or being satisfied or, yeah, this is okay.
So
That's
some
not.
of us might call that population control.
Yeah, yeah,
Just
yeah.
controlling the population.
They absolutely. I think that's what that's what's happened, and
Hmm.
people have allowed themselves to be controlled,
Yes.
and we don't need to. And I
Hmm.
think that the pandemic was almost felt like a break in
Yes.
in in time, in a way, that this thing
Yes.
happened for. You can debate the reasons and things, of course you can, but
Sure.
it was a break, and people did behave, think, operate, act differently. And I think that was and will be reflected upon in time as actually that was the first proper break we had, and the more will come for,
Yes.
for whatever causes. But I think that was a
Yes.
real break in how humanity perceived itself.
Yeah, I think the astrology of 2025 is fascinating for this, because all of the outer planets, except for Pluto, who just moved into Aquarius, all of the major planets are going to move into new signs. And so we're going to see massive collective shifts that will relate to that, to those, because people were different. They behaved differently in the pandemic, but many people, most people, behaved exactly as themselves in the most programmed way they could.
Yeah,
And that was why those of us who challenged and were on the fringe were such a threat,
yeah,
because we kept saying, hello, seems like you might be a little bit programmed. And it doesn't matter why all of these things are happening. It's fascinating to see even things culturally that are being exposed. You're like, so, I, many of the theories that are being proved now are things that I've been learning about for over a decade, but they're coming to the surface now because humanity is ready. We're
yeah,
ready to evolve. And that evolution is not gentle, and um, it's not pleasant, and it's not easy. But that is exactly, as we started this conversation, like that is exactly what we need to
mm,
do in order to change. You can't be a resilient person if you don't know that you've gone through something. If you don't understand, holy crow, I am programmed, you'll never deprogram, right? If you don't think
yeah,
about how many times you put your hand behind your back, right?
absolutely. And I think that one of the great words you use there is the word ready, that
Mm.
we are now like your friend was ready to leave
Yes.
behind the trauma, etc.
Yes.
And whilst you might have been thinking about it, there comes a point when whether it's you're ready and accepting of love, both for yourself and for other people, whether you're ready for change, whether you're ready to embrace what you've always known is there. Really, it is that readiness, and I do agree. I think more people are becoming more open to being ready, and you've just got to be open, and you've got to recognize signs that you can easily dismiss as coincidence or whatever else. Actually, no, they're literally literally
That's
signs.
the universe.
Somebody's there literally waving a huge flag. That's the sign. It's not. Oh, that's funny. Yes, I saw that again. No. If something's happening,
Yeah.
be ready to accept it. That's the thing I think really.
Yeah. And, the thing about change is that it is the only constant, right? Like
Yes.
your cells are changing right now.
Yep.
The planet is rotating. We are moving in space. We're evolving, like it or not. And so the more that you're resisting change, the more that you're going to hate your life, the more that you're just going to go along to get
Yeah.
along. And what I know about this evolution is that not everybody will make it. Not everybody is meant to land at the place where they change as a person into the better version of themselves. Some people are literally meant to go to their graves as they are.
Yep.
But like you said about the next generation, their children, their children's children, their children's children's children will not know that. They will see the behavior in the one, and in trying to heal it intergenerationally, we will.
One of the things you obviously give to others, you're giving it to me now, and to lots of people you work with, you give so much energy and passion. And what practices do you have in place that help you protect your own and maintain your own physical and mental well-being?
Yeah.
So it must sometimes be draining, depending on the time of year and the state of the universe, etc., to do what you do. So how do you look after yourself?
Andrew, you just had a mouthful. Yes. um, I spend a lot of time with me.
Hmm.
Um, I journal, I write, I read, I pray, I meditate, and I really, I breathe. I take care of my spirit a lot. I spend a lot of time in self-containment. And that's actually something that I'm really, really working on, is like expanding my self-containment. So not necessarily expanding my energy, but being contained within my own safe space, and then expanding that so that other people can receive from me. I love to give, but I really need to protect myself primarily. Um, I move my body. I do a lot of walking. Um, I'm very, very fortunate to have incredible people in my life who support me in like innumerable ways, to remember when I forget, because I do forget sometimes about how magical I am. They remind me, and they often remind me, like, have you rested? Have you taken care of yourself? I'm pretty good about things like, getting massages and energy work and things like that to help move the energy, especially when I start to feel really tight. I can just like, I have to remind myself, like, oh yeah, you're an energetic being and you're carrying things. Maybe you need to not carry so much. Um, and yeah, I have a really, really big, open, loving relationship with God, and or the universe. I interchange the two often,
Hmm.
but I ask for a lot of support. I ask for guidance. I ask for what I need. And I believe that I deserve it from the universe. So when I ask, I know that it will be given. And I just kind of, yeah, pray. I do whatever I can. I lean on my cards. I lean on my crystals. I carry what I need to carry. I let go of what I need to let go of, and yeah, I just kind of listen as much as I can. The universe is always, as you said, delivering messages. And I'm very, very grateful that I've spent a long time sharpening and honing that intuition. So much so that I have like a course on my website called, I don't know if I can swear, but uh, Own Your Fucking Intuition is the name of this course. Um,
Okay.
just teaching you how to do it, because that is the only way I've been able to do this as I do it. Because if you are not following the intuitive signs that it's time to rest, or that it's time to take action, or that it's time to change, or that it's time to stay the same, um, then you're going to be lost. So that's kind of how I've stayed found in
Do
all.
you do you love yourself?
Oh
Have
yeah.
you given yourself permission? You do.
Oh
Okay,
yeah.
good,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Most days, not every day, but most days.
And this feels like a very apt question to you, probably more so than to anybody else. But what does the future hold?
The future feels like a telepathic cohesion where we're all understanding of what we bring, who we are, what we are here for, and how your enoughness and my enoughness bring enough to the table that nobody has lacked. I think that is something that, so there is this cohesion and this mutual collective understanding of our power as humans, and our gift, what we collectively are here for and what we are individually here for. And I think the more like immediate future, it's going to feel like, I've been saying this for a long time. We've been pregnant with the new earth for a while. And it's going to feel like we're in labor now. And it'll be one of those circumstances where you think you're going to have one baby and you end up having octuplets by accident in the delivery. There will be a lot of new shifts, a lot of new life, a lot of new ways of being, and things that we didn't expect. Thank goodness, because the systems that are ending need new life, new creation. So I think we'll see, some interesting evolution in the next 12 months for sure. And, the astrology kind of continues like that into 2027, where we'll have a new reality on the other side of that. So I'm looking forward to it.
Could anything be any more exciting than that? That's a fabulous view into the future. Thank you so much for your time, your kindness, your knowledge. I've really enjoyed the experience.
Me too.
Yeah, I've got a lot to think about now. So
yeah. Thank you.